Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Julie Chrisley forced to take the long route back to prison. Julie Chrisley is en route back to prison following her resentencing hearing last week. The Chrisley Knows Best star seems to be taking the long way back to FMC Lexington, where she will serve the remainder of her sentence. It could possibly take Julie up to 60 days to be back in the Bureau of Prisons, BOP, custody. Here's what we know about Julie's resentencing and her upcoming travel back to Kentucky. Savannah lashes out following Julie's resentencing. Todd and Julie Chrisley were first sentenced to 19 years combined in prison in 2022 for bank fraud and tax evasion. They immediately began the appeals process. The couple reported to prison in January 2023. As fans know, Julie Chrisley attended her resentencing hearing in Atlanta, Georgia, on September 25. The court previously vacated Julie's sentence due to insufficient evidence that the reality star was involved in the crimes prior to 2007. However, the judge ruled to keep Julie's sentence the same. She received the same initial 84-month sentence that she received in 2022. Of course, there will be reductions for good behavior, and her sentence was already reduced by 14 months. As far as the court is concerned, though, the 7-year sentence was adequate for what she was convicted of. This came as a shock to her daughter, Savannah Chrisley, who thought that she'd receive some additional time off from her sentence. Savannah also publicly slammed the judge and prosecutor outside the courthouse following the hearing last week. The Chrisley Knows Best star said the judge chastised her in court, stating that she'd been lying to Chloe and Grayson Chrisley about when Julie would be coming home. Upon leaving the courtroom, Savannah Chrisley called the prosecution uneducated. Julie Chrisley on the long road back to Lexington. Now, fans think that Savannah's words may have had an impact on Julie Chrisley behind bars. As previously reported, Julie was forced to take the long way to her hearing in Atlanta. She spent around 45 days on the road, give or take. This is something that wardens allegedly do to inmates who complain too much. Savannah has been extremely vocal about injustice in the prison system since her parents have been incarcerated. Many people believe that her comments have impacted how her mom and dad are being treated. Fans believe that Savannah is continuing to get her mom, Julie Chrisley, in trouble. One person took to Reddit to discuss it. They wrote, "I noticed they are sending JC back to Kentucky via the long route. It must be the same route she took to Georgia. She's still not in BOP custody. One day Sassy will learn to keep her mouth shut. But until then, enjoy the ride, Jules." The early morning air hung thick with tension as Julie Chrisley stood at the gate of the halfway house, clutching her worn handbag and trying to make sense of what had just happened. She had followed every rule, showed up to every check-in, and completed her court-mandated work detail without complaint. But despite whispers that her time in the facility might soon be over, a chilling phone call from her attorney changed everything. Julie, her lawyer had said, his voice measured but uneasy. "The Bureau of Prisons has revoked the recent accommodation. You're being sent back to the facility in Lexington today." There was no dramatic reasoning offered, just an administrative reevaluation. Julie, once the Southern belle of reality television, now found herself at the mercy of a system that didn't care about cameras or reputation. The only thing more shocking than her return to prison was the manner in which it would unfold. The Chrisley matriarch wasn't being escorted in a private van or taken quietly in a government vehicle. No, due to a logistical failure, an alleged shortage of marshals and federal transport units, Julie was forced to endure a days-long, multi-leg commercial journey. With shackles at her ankles and a heavy federal escort at her side, she was about to embark on what some within the system called diesel therapy. a quiet punishment cloaked in bureaucracy. Her journey began with a 7-hour bus ride from the halfway house in Florida to a federal processing center in Atlanta. The bus was cold, the windows grimy, and the air thick with a silence she couldn't quite penetrate. Other female inmates were loaded on beside her, many staring, some whispering. A few recognized her. One woman, seated 2 rows back, leaned forward and murmured, "Ain't you that lady from that family show?" Julie nodded weakly. Those 3 words throbbed in her chest like a heartbeat. Once she was the proud matriarch of the Chrisley Knows Best empire. Now she was just another woman in an orange jumpsuit, hoping the driver didn't forget to stop for a bathroom break. The bus finally pulled into Atlanta around midnight. At the processing center, Julie spent the night in a holding cell with flickering lights and a thin blanket. She pressed it to her face to block out the sterile scent of bleach and stale air. Her thoughts drifted to Todd, to Savannah, to her grandchildren. She wondered if they even knew yet. She hadn't had a chance to call. The next morning, she was loaded onto a plane. Not a commercial jet with first-class comfort like she used to enjoy, but a federal inmate transport flight, dubbed by some guards as Con Air. There were no peanuts, no overhead luggage compartments, just metal restraints and nervous glances. The air was filled with tension, and the hum of the engine was the only soundtrack. From the plane, they flew into St. Louis for a layover. Julie wasn't allowed to leave the airport hangar. She waited for hours, her wrists aching from the cuffs, her dignity bruised with every passing second. The guards were not cruel, but they weren't kind either. To them, she was a file number, a part of the chain, someone who once had a face on a billboard, but now had a bunk waiting in a prison cell. By day 4 of the journey, Julie had been transported by bus, plane, and even a paddy wagon. She had slept in a total of 3 holding cells. And still, she wasn't at her destination. When they finally neared Lexington, Kentucky, the skies were gray, and a heavy rain began to fall. As if on cue, the transport vehicle's windshield wipers gave out, forcing the group to take refuge at a local sheriff's department until it passed. There, a few deputies couldn't hide their curiosity. "Julie Chrisley," one of them asked, incredulous, "what in the world are you doing in our neck of the woods?" Julie gave a weary smile. "Apparently I'm taking the scenic route back to prison." He chuckled, but the irony was lost on her. By the time they reached the prison gates, Julie felt hollow. It wasn't just the grueling journey that had drained her. It was what it symbolized. Her return wasn't private. It wasn't dignified. It was long, drawn out, and humiliating. Back in the Lexington Federal Facility, a cold concrete cell awaited her. She was given fresh linens, a new ID badge, and instructions to report to her assigned job detail the following morning. She followed the rules, quietly slipping back into the rhythm of prison life. But inside, something had shifted. That long road back, every humiliating mile, lit a fire in Julie that hadn't been there before. She realized she couldn't afford to count on special treatment or appeals anymore. If she wanted her freedom back, she'd have to fight harder than ever. Not just in the courts, but in the public eye, in her family's name, and for her dignity. Later that week, Savannah finally managed to get a call through. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm so sorry. We're going to fix this. I promise." Julie's voice was steady, resolute. "I'm not asking for special treatment anymore, sweetheart. Just justice, and I won't stop until we get it." In the months to come, the phrase "the long road back to prison" would take on a new meaning, not just for Julie, but for anyone following the Chrisley story. Because for Julie, that road was no longer about humiliation.